Good morning, everybody. It's Matt Linklet here with Link Biz Solutions, financial strategies that transform your business. Our family office strategies work with business owners to put 15% back into your bottom line and back into your pocket each and every year. I want to share with you some great ideas that help businesses across the country. And so today I brought to you Darrin Mish, the IRS attorney. He's helping taxpayers with tax problems. What he helps with is such things as audits, levies, garnishments, liens. He's been doing this for over 20 years. And if you've ever been contacted by the IRS or see an envelope from the IRS, it's immediately stressful. The IRS tax code is extremely complicated. The IRS and the IRS problems that you may have, they never go away. And the IRS is relentless. They're like a rabid dog. Darrin has worked with over 2,500 taxpayers over the last 20 years. And what's great about most entrepreneurs out there is we go out and solve a problem. And so Darrin was solving his own problem from the first year that he was in business and the tax bill that he got presented with. So Darrin also lives in Tampa, and he lives on Triple Barrel Ranch. I will let him elaborate on that later in the podcast here. And beyond everything, Darrin is a great friend. I've known him for over 10 years. He's a very sincere business owner, and he's a very sincere lawyer. So he's going to share with us some great nuggets as an IRS attorney, and also I think you'll hear some great nuggets about Darrin as a businessman and as a family man. So with that, Darrin, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate you being on the podcast with me.
Hey, Matt, it's really exciting to be here. Thanks for asking.
No, very cool. And so, Darrin, why don't you start out? Tell us a little bit about what you do and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So what I do is I represent taxpayers primarily who have problems with the IRS. So like you said, when a business owner or just a regular taxpayer gets a letter from the IRS, it's a fairly terrifying experience. Your heart rate starts to increase and your heart starts to want to beat out of its chest, and then you rip open that envelope and you want to know what's going on. And then you start to read the letter, and it doesn't make any sense. But there's usually a big balance due at the bottom of the page, and you know that that's not good. And those are the kind of people that I represent and help try to make those problems go away.
No, very, it's definitely stressful. Like I said, anytime you get something from the IRS, matter of fact, not too long ago, in 2016, I think is what the notice was, is the CPA we had at the time didn't account for something properly. I believe it was on my Schedule C. And so I had, they were saying I owed some money. So I had to go back and demonstrate that it was actually on my tax form. And so basically they, reduced the amount that we owed. And it was a pretty stressful moment from right there. So Darrin, tell me a little bit about how you got started. How did you even get started in this type of business?
Well, it's interesting. I actually went to law school, and in law school, I never took a single accounting or finance class. I just didn't think that tax was going to be interesting to me. Ironically, I had actually worked for 3 years in undergrad at a printing company that actually printed tax forms, and I worked in customer service. And so all day I would answer questions about W-2s, 1099s, 941s, W-3s, 1098s, all those tax forms. And people listening are like, what are those? I think I know what a W-2 and a 1099 is. But there's all these tax forms that the IRS requires business owners to use. And I sold those for 3 years. So then fast forward, I go to law school, and I always imagine that I'm going to be a transactional kind of lawyer, a kind of lawyer that sits behind a desk, not one that goes to court. But lo and behold, I get out of law school and I end up in a courtroom. I end up a public defender, and I'm practicing criminal defense law. And I did that for about 7 years. And then one day I decided to go out on my own and open my own law practice. And within about a year, I had generated a tax problem. And I generated that tax problem because nobody had really sat me down and explained to me common sense, logical ways to A, reduce my taxes, or B, make sure I was complying with the code and paying my taxes as I go, that kind of thing. And so I had to figure out how to solve that problem for myself, because when I went looking for help, couldn't find anybody to help me resolve my tax problems. And so I figured it out. I resolved it. I ended up paying it off over time. But that's right around in that time frame is when a little light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, wow, that could be a pretty interesting niche because there's not a lot of competition. There's a big barrier to entry, right? Because the IRS is big, bad, and scary. Lawyers are not immune from those feelings. I represent lots of lawyers, as a matter of fact. But that's really what happened. I found a mentor who was teaching people how to, solve IRS tax problems for clients. And then within about a year, I was actually teaching for that mentors group. I was teaching other lawyers, CPAs, and enrolled agents how to do this kind of work. So I just have this way about me. When I get into something, I jump in full force. And call it insecurity. Maybe that's what it is. But I want to learn everything there is to learn about the subject matter so that I can feel confident in my answers and in my representation of clients, because the work is a whole lot easier if you actually know what you're doing. And so that's how I ended up representing IRS tax problems. Is once I got started, I just jumped in full force and learned everything I could find out about how to help people in those situations. And that learning has never stopped. I still learn new things every week or every month.
It's true. I don't think maybe it's an insecurity, but I've heard many of people like, great actors as Marky Mark or Mark Wahlberg rather, and Hugh Jackman. And one of the things they said is it's not necessarily a fear of failure. It's a fear of not being prepared. And so that's probably what drives you as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. Actually trial work, we'll go back to that experience I had. I've tried about, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20 jury trials in my career. And public speaking is one of most people's biggest fears, right?
Yep.
But it's really not public speaking, I don't think, that is their fear. It's the fear of being asked to speak in public when you're not prepared.
Right.
Just like you said. When you're prepared, when I would prepare for a trials are really no big deal. After about the first, 30 seconds or a minute,
yep.
You get those butterflies. It's kind of like an athlete. You get those butterflies calm down and you get rolling and you know what you're doing because you're super prepared. It's really not that stressful, but it's that lack of preparation that makes us feel scared and anxious. And that circles back to my clientele. When they walk in my office as a prospect, they're super scared and anxious, typically, even if they don't admit it. And the reason that they feel that way is because they don't have enough information.
Yeah.
Or put in other words, they're not prepared.
Yep.
And so part of what I do, there's a huge educational component behind what I do, is I try to help educate them, A, as to what we're going to do to resolve the problem, but B, and almost more important, is what are we going to do in the future to keep this from happening again? Because it's heartbreaking that it happened to begin with, but it's even more heartbreaking if it continues to happen over and over again because nobody took the time to explain what they're supposed to be doing so they don't have to go through this again.
Yeah, and so to build on that, what are the biggest problems that people come to you with, or what are the types of mistakes are they actually making, to get them into the IRS trouble, if you will?
Yeah, a super common mistake that people make is they're self-employed, and typically they have no entity, right? I mean, it goes back to Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth. Most entrepreneurs are not really entrepreneurs. They're technicians who just go into business because they're the best baker,
right,
or they're the best plumber, or the best lawyer, or even the best doctor. And so they go into business on their own thinking this is going to be great. I'm going to set my own hours. I'm going to work for myself, that kind of thing. But what they did is they just created a job for themselves with an even more tyrannical boss than they had before because they're even more tyrannical than their prior boss. And so they get into this business on their own, and they just want to do the work. They just want to do the job.
Yeah.
They just want to bake, or they just want to do the plumbing. And so very frequently, almost always, there's no thought put into the financial aspects of business. How are we going to be organized? Are we going to have an entity? Are we going to be an LLC? Are we going to be a corporation? If we're a corporation, are we going to be an S Corp? Are we going to be a C Corp? All those things that maybe some of our listeners don't even understand. And that's fine, right, because that's why you have people like you and I, is to help explain those things. But so people start off on a business and they're not organized at all. And so since they're not organized and nobody sat them down to explain to them how they're going to pay taxes, what happens is they just go ahead and they do what you always call is like they use a tax preparer that just records history, right? And so the tax preparer says, okay, well, congratulations, you had a great year, but now you owe $25,000 to the IRS or $50,000 to the IRS, you know, that type of thing. And then our hypothetical entrepreneur here says, wow, that's a lot of money. Okay, I'm going to scrape that together, or I'm going to go on an installment agreement or whatever, you know, they think is the right thing to do. But then they don't ever change the behavior that created that balance to begin with. And so in year one, they owe $25,000. In year two, they owe $25,000, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, they owe $100,000 or $200,000, and they just don't know how to get out of it. And it's not intuitive, but this is the God's honest truth. The best thing to do is to get current now.
Right.
Start paying your current taxes now. So if you're early in the year, if you're in January, figure out a way to pay your taxes on a monthly or quarterly basis, your estimated tax payments in this circumstance, is so that you don't put yourself farther and farther behind. And then we can go ahead and circle back and try to figure out how to solve, you know, the bad acts of the past. And I don't even mean that in a condemning way. I just mean we can go back and solve the mistakes that have been made previously that generated the liability in the first place. Does that all make sense?
No, totally. You know, when, you know, the first thing you said there's something pretty important is organization. And, you know, we partner on a lot of different business. And when you think about, you know, I can think about a guy last summer who had an LLC and he was filing as a sole prop and he was paying $16,000 in self-employment tax. And just by moving him over to filing as an S corp, we're able to eliminate a lot of those types of costs. So people usually don't even know those types of structures. So they're actually could be paying more in taxes than they had originally thought. And so 100% true is, you know, even during the holidays there, one lady, you know, came on as a client and, you know, she was just commingling her personal funds and her business funds, and just wasn't, you know, by doing that, it just wasn't organized, wasn't structured, and she didn't have a clear picture of what she was making, what her expenses were, and kind of what her taxes were. So just really that organization, I think, overall. And, you know, the biggest thing too is what you're saying there is anything in business, you know, you got to automate it. And so, you know, if you can automate the more of your business that you can automate, the easier it's going to be on you. And so why not automate, you know, your tax payments and, you know, automate that on a monthly or quarterly basis, right? Absolutely. I'm going to take it back to a little analogy here. I'm a fisherman. I grew up fishing with my dad, and I have a boat and stuff, and I don't get to go as often as I'd like. And so depending upon, if there's non-fishermen that are listening, depending upon the time of year and the conditions, you would target different species. And for different species, you need different tackle, you need different bait or lures. You're going to go to a different location. You're going to fish at a different depth. Yep. All these things that are going on. And so the point of this analogy is, if I go out fishing and I've got a plan, and I basically stick to the plan. Now, I might have to deviate from the plan a little here and there. I might have to steer around an obstacle, or I might have to substitute a location that's similar but slightly different because there's a lot of boating activity in that area or something. But if I stick with the plan, I'm almost always successful. I almost always get the fish that I'm looking for. Right. Now, compare and contrast to the days when I don't want to make a plan. I just want to go out on the boat, be in the sun, feel the cool breeze on my face, and drink some cold beers. But I'm going to throw some fishing rods on the boat, maybe a tackle box, and maybe I'll throw some old frozen nasty bait I got in the freezer on the boat. On those days, I never catch anything. Yep. I mean, you know, I have my beers and I enjoy the sun, but I don't catch any fish. And it's because I didn't have a plan. I didn't adhere to the plan. And so what happened? My results were poor. Yep. They weren't optimal. They were different. And so that's all we're saying here is if we can plan ahead with regard to our taxes, we're going to get a more optimal result. If we don't plan, we're going to get the worst result. We're going to get the result that, like, I don't know what the stat is, but I'm going to say the result of like 95% of the people out there. That's the result we're going to get. We're just going to get the crummy result, basically. Yep. No, exactly. It's all about having that plan. And, you know, thinking about my early years in business and the mistakes I made, it was because I just wasn't organized. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have somebody working with me that was disciplined to help me out. And so just kind of starting with that plan early on. And if you get yourself in trouble, it's creating that plan, to get yourself out of that trouble is ultimately what we want to do, right?
Yeah, you're right, and it's funny that word plan can make some people shudder because it sounds complicated and hard. But the plan that you and I are talking about are plans, really. A plan to pay the least amount of tax, or the plan to get you out of trouble. The plan is devised by the professional, not the taxpayer, not the client. So there's really nothing hard on the client's part to implement the plan. I have a meeting right after we get off this podcast where I'd set up a corporation for a gentleman that's very unsophisticated in his education and his business savvy. And I'm going to sit him down, and in about 15 minutes, I'm going to explain exactly what he needs to do to work our plan so that he can pay the least amount of taxes that he's going to be able to pay, given his situation. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
Well, that's the other thing is a lot of people, I think, when we bring on people and we do what we call a full plan, and where we partner with you and things like that, is, I tell people, look, this is no time. The only time is if you don't want to trust the process. So if you just kind of turn it over to us, trust the process, basically you're going to spend less time because all your finances are going to be taken care of. And so you have less stress, less stress, focus on your business and go make some money, right?
Right. So it's a win-win. It's a win for them because they're not going to spend a lot of time, and it's a win for them because they're going to pay a lot less in taxes. And actually, it's a third win because they're not going to get in trouble either, because everything's structured and organized and documented so that they're going to keep their nose clean and stay out of trouble, all while paying the least amount of tax legally possible, or hopefully the least amount of tax legally possible.
That's the thing. I was, we're looking at buying CPA firms, and I was looking at one here in Chicago, and it's a great firm. And the guy was extremely organized, and he had, basically binders he gave people. And at the end of the year, and he said, look, you're not going to, I'm not saying this is 100% true per se, because I don't know, you're the attorney, but he said, basically, if I give you everything that substantiates everything we did, you're going to be okay. And so that was his model when I went to his office on Saturday. So I think as long as you track, make sure everything is trackable and backed up, that's what you want, and that's what you need in a good team with a tax attorney and an accounting office.
Absolutely. Of all the work that I do regarding tax problem resolution, the most difficult work that I do is the defense of audits. And the reason that it's the most difficult is because virtually everybody that comes in with an audit problem has no documentation. Right. There's always, I'm always kind and compassionate to them, but there's always a story about a fire, flood, hurricane, kind of event where they don't have any of the documentation substantiating the positions that they took, the deductions that they took. And so it's very hard to defend because you have, the way that you defend an audit is through documentation and substantiation. And so, just as a short aside, I'm directing clients more and more to store their documentation in the cloud.
Right.
Because then if you have a fire, flood, hurricane event, it doesn't matter because there's redundant backups. There's backups of your stuff. And that's just an example of organization that we were talking about, just a minute ago. Well, if you get that automated and organized, then really you're going to be able to sleep very well at night because you know that if something adverse comes your way regarding the IRS, you're going to be able to handle it.
Yep. And, that's exactly what we do is we document everything. And, one thing that, most accounting offices out there just want to do tax preparation. And it's like, well, how much is a tax return? Well, you know what you're going to give us is not really preparation for a tax return. So we have to be your accountant and to keep you organized throughout the year so we can actually help you pay the legal minimum in taxes, to help you save money, and to help you make sure that you have that money there to pay the tax bill. And so really it's that, all going back to that organization. So, one of the things, go ahead.
I totally agree with you. The key here is organization. But again, organization doesn't have to mean scary or complicated or uncomfortable. It's actually quite the opposite.
No, most people are already paying for it. They're just not getting it. Meaning, they pay for an attorney possibly to set up their organization. That attorney never visits the setup again, or consults with them again in the future if they should change that organization, that corporation they set up. And then they work with an accounting office or a CPA office, and they offer no tax advice. They're just doing the preparation. So they're paying for it. They're just not getting the service and the value that they're paying for. And so,
exactly,
keeping it simple. So, Darrin, one of the things I know is that an IRS audit, any of this stuff, it's not that it's some of it's really scary, and some of it just seems complicated because it's not what we do every day. So, explain to me, hey, I have a tax problem. I come to Darrin Mish. I call the office. Explain to me how I become a client and how my problem gets resolved. What's that process look like working with you?
Interesting question. It's a great question. So you call the office, and somebody who has probably more knowledge about resolving tax problems than you, the client, the prospect, will answer the phone, and they're going to talk to you about your problem. They're going to ask you some questions, and they're going to schedule you an appointment. But what they're not going to do is they're not going to judge you. They're not going to be negative. They're not going to talk down to you. They're going to be kind and compassionate, because that's what we do here, is we help people solve problems. And I hear all the time that people were afraid or apprehensive about giving us a call because they were afraid that we were going to be mean to them. And I find it interesting, because I do know practitioners that kind of employ that strategy, and nothing could be farther from the truth here. I mean, I value compassion at a really high level. I also value self-responsibility at a real high level. But when somebody's made a mistake, and let's face it, who hasn't made big mistakes in their life, you don't need somebody to be judgmental or to be, being nasty to you. You need help, and that's why they're calling us. So we schedule an appointment, and if they're local here in the Florida area, then they'll probably come in and sit down with me personally, and we'll go through their problem, what the problem is, how the problem was caused, and then we'll devise a strategy. We'll set a fee. The fee will be a tremendous value. Based upon typically how much money you're going to save. If I can't save you money, it's still going to be a tremendous value because of the just the services we provide and keeping the IRS off your back and keeping really nasty, bad things from happening. It's interesting. I don't know if I do know that you know this, Matt, but I actually represent clients in all 50 states. And so if it's somebody's calling from Arkansas or Washington State or Alaska or something like that, they can still have an appointment with me. We do those telephonically, and I represent clients in all 50 states and have had cases in all 50 states. So then we'll just do the same thing basically that we do for an in-person appointment. We'll just do it on the phone and devise a plan to help solve the problem, the immediate problem, and then we'll also discuss how to keep that from happening again in the future. And just recently, I've decided to go ahead and start to implement tax planning for these smaller clients too, because after we've resolved the problem, because I don't know if it's very rare the number of times I've reviewed a tax return for one of my tax problem clients and they were actually paying the bare minimum legally required tax that they were supposed to. Most of my clients, sort of ironically, are paying way above what they're supposed to be paying in taxes, which is helping to contribute to their tax problems.
That's true. And you know why, and it's exactly what you said, is most people are ashamed. And I have a mentor, and he lives in a castle, and he's big on social media, so you guys know it. I won't, I don't want to bring up his name and tell the story, but he tells the story about 20 years ago how he was getting sued by the government, and they froze all of his accounts. He had all his bank accounts were completely frozen, and they had 40 different counts against him that he, that they said he did, and his bank accounts were frozen for a couple of years. And so, what? And now, he's a rich guy, lives in a castle. He's a wealthy guy. But you know what? We're all gonna get our butt kicked in business. We're all gonna mess up. And the thing is, you can't bury your head in the sand. You just got to keep showing up. I mean, that's what I think takes somebody from that business owner that makes $50,000 to $100,000 is the average business in America that's around for 5 years makes. That's what I think takes them to that exponential level, is just, the resiliency of getting your ass kicked and messing up, but still showing up and learning from your experiences and then doing something different, right? So showing up, doing something different, that you learn from your experiences, so you can keep learning, keep growing, and keep taking different actions. So these aren't these things aren't a problem, that in the future, and that you can create that ultimate wealth for yourself. So I think that's, never be ashamed. Just keep showing up, and as you talked about, you learn from your mistakes. And man, most of the stuff that I do for clients is because I made the mistake myself, and say, hey, how do I create this value so they don't make the mistake, and so then they could go make more money.
I wish you could see me right now, because ever since you started talking in that last little segment, I've been nodding. Yeah. like a Cupid doll. I'm just like, yeah, man, exactly. I totally agree. So I always say that, just in life, whether you're a business owner or not, we're all going to face challenges, and some of those challenges are going to be more serious than others. But I say that contained in every challenge lies an even greater opportunity. And that just sounds like some saying, right? But it's really true. Every challenge, there contains a bigger opportunity, and it's our job, just as human beings, and especially as business owners, to figure out, okay, this challenge is designed to teach me a lesson. What is the lesson? And then what leverage can I gain from having learned that lesson, and then turn that into an even greater opportunity? And I share that with clients a lot of times, because they come in and they're really down.
Yeah.
Maybe they owe $250,000. Maybe they haven't filed a tax return in 20 years. My record, by the way, is the gentleman had not filed in between 40 and 50 years. I can't remember how many, but he had not filed a tax return since 1960 at the time. And it's kind of a sad story, because he had essentially wasted at least half of his life, most of his productive earning years' life, not fulfilling his potential because he was so afraid of the government.
Yeah. Because
he hadn't filed tax returns. And so the happy ending is we got him all squared away, and it was really not that big a deal. But the sad part of the story is it was a big deal. He wasted 40 years because he wasn't willing to face the challenge. I mean, ultimately he did, but it took 40 years. Now think if it would have taken 4 months or 4 years, then he would have had a nicer retirement. He would have had a better legacy left for his kids. But instead, he just sort of worked under the table, jobs and that kind of thing, and really never fulfilled his potential. So in every challenge that we go through in life, I mean, there's an opportunity. And like you said, a lot of these things that we've learned through the years, Matt, you and I, and it's just from mistakes that we've made. And then you want to pass along that wisdom to people, to clients, prospects, so that they don't make those same mistakes, which I think is really the art of being human, is you don't want people to suffer. And if we can help them with those, avoid those mistakes, we're going to avoid suffering.
That's it. We just want to become more valuable and help people. And, just to kind of give you one quick anecdote or story around that, and then I'd love to hear kind of, some a couple of your biggest heuristic ideas you hold in business, or what you utilize to maximize your business. But I was, as a young guy, I was selling air tools out of my car, and Jim Rohn, I used to listen to Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy on the cassette tape that they had back then. And one thing Jim Rohn said, he was talking about a guy who lost his job, and he came home and his wife said, well, then do you want to go to dinner tonight? We're going to an expensive restaurant. And, his idea was, look, you keep living and you keep showing up. Guy goes to the restaurant, he's sitting down, he's telling his wife, just about what happened and everything. Guy on the table next to him hears him and offers him a job, paying him like twice as much as he was making. And so ultimately, I mean, every challenge I get, it's exactly like you said, is, what is this here to teach me? Because really life is just a reflection of what we are, not to get, too ethereal on you, but, we don't see life as it is. We see life as we are. So all you have to do is say, how do I change the way I'm looking at this? And what can I do, or what thoughts can I have to have a different result? So what actions can I take to have a different result? And what thoughts can I have to have a different result? Because, that's really what it boils down to. So, Darrin, what do you think? You've been in business for a long time. You're an entrepreneur. What are some things? What are one or two things that you would say beyond maybe what we've already talked about? So not to kind of pigeonhole you here, but what are some things that when you wake up in the morning, you say, if I think this way, I know it's going to be a great day. I know my business is going to do well. Or what are just a couple things that maybe you could share here in the kind of final moments here?
Well, one thing I use a lot is you got to fake it to make it.
That's right.
And it sounds kind of negative, but I don't mean it that way. What I mean is I'm not really a morning person, and I have to roll into the office in the morning whether I really want to be here or not. Okay. And then, so if I have an appointment with somebody first thing in the morning at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, a lot of times I won't necessarily feel like being there. I might not be awake or whatever. And so what I do is I just absolutely am over the top enthusiastic, because I actually know deep in my core I am enthusiastic to meet people, because I'm always enthusiastic to meet new prospects and just people in general. And so I'm just over the top enthusiastic to meet them. And an amazing thing occurs. Within just a few moments, within a few minutes, I'm transformed from that guy that was kind of dragging, that didn't necessarily want to be there. And I turn into that over-the-top, enthusiastic, kind, compassionate, wonder maker who can solve any tax problem that there is. That sounds really simplistic, but that's one little tool that I use to keep myself going. There was one other thing I wanted to tell you about a philosophy that I have that I think could be helpful to people is I think that complacency in business as a business owner is the worst possible thing. I think if you're complacent, you're actually dying.
That's right.
You should always have your foot on the gas pedal to the metal. You should always be trying to grow, expand, if not your business, at least your mind. Okay? And so one of the things I do is I put pressure on myself. I put financial pressure on myself.
Yep.
Sometimes I buy things I don't know if I can afford.
Right.
Not in an irresponsible way, but investment type things.
Yep.
And I do that because I know that if I push myself financially, that I'll have the requisite motivation to grow my income, to grow my business, and then that will better my family, our finances and our legacy.
I think we
be careful with that one. I'm not talking about credit card debt. I'm not talking about going out and buying the new fishing rod or the new car.
Yeah.
I'm talking about push yourself to buy things that will later turn into investments.
No, I mean, what you're saying is 100% right. The first thing is feelings. One thing, I have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old, and I think sometimes people look at me pretty harsh because sometimes I tell them, and not so many words. I mean, I don't want it to be misconstrued here because I know they're 4 and 2. They got to be kids. But sometimes I tell them, nobody cares how you feel, man. You show up, you get dressed. We're doing this. I don't care how you feel, because nobody does in life. You gotta figure out, how do you put yourself in the right state to get the result you want, because you don't feel like it all the time. I go to the gym at 5 a.m. I do not feel like it 90% of the time. I do not feel like getting out of bed at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. But you know what? I do enjoy when I'm done, and so how do you change that? And the other thing you said is being complacent. And this is key. This is so big. This is how I think anyways, because you're either expanding or you're contracting. And if you think, hey, I got a tax problem, it's going to grow. So you know what? Just one thing that I live by is revenue cures all and sales cures all. So if I have a problem, all I have to do is grow bigger than that problem. And so I just focus on growth because I'm always going to have problems. I know it's easier said than done, and we're just on a podcast here, but believe me, I do a 10, 15-minute meditation every day because I know that if I could focus on growth for those 15 minutes, it will permeate through the day, opposed to sitting there focusing on my problems for 15 minutes. That's not a good way to start the day. So that complacency, are you expanding or are you contracting? I mean, it's simple to ask yourself every day. And are these actions I'm taking, are they expanding my business or contracting my business? Are they expanding my life or are they contracting my life? I think it really boils down. It's easier said than done, but it's that simple.
You're so right, man. I will often tell people, listen, if you have a problem that you can solve by writing a check that you can afford to write, you don't really have a problem.
Right.
And that goes back to, some problems can be solved. A lot of problems can be solved just by simply growing your revenue.
Yep.
But you're right. People get trapped in that fear. I've been there. I've been there a lot. I've been there many, many times over the years where it's just a combination of facts and circumstances, and you just get locked in this fear circle, and you're just paralyzed. You got to really fight that. It's just a bad place to be because, there's fight or flight, but sometimes people don't do either. They just wallow in it, and they just live there in that fear circle, and the problem that they're worried about just gets worse and worse because they're not taking any action. Action kills fear. And so if you're fearful, if you're taking no action to resolve the fear, you're just going to become more fearful, and more negativity is going to breed more negativity. So you got to take some action to kill that fear. And it's interesting. Sometimes if you just take the first action, this is kind of a self-serving example, but if you have a tax problem, you just give the office a call and schedule an appointment. You're going to feel better right off the bat. Totally.
Just taking that action. So, I think we gave a ton of nuggets today. One thing here, man, I think you want to share this. Well, I don't know if you want to share this or not, but Darrin, you're a unique guy, man. I know you live on a pretty cool place, and you coined it a triple barrel ranch. So just share a little bit about what Triple Barrel Ranch is. Gives people a little insight into your personal life there. I think it's pretty cool. You're a big family man. I've been around a lot of businesses, a lot of salespeople, a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't want to say this is unique, but it's definitely a little bit unique. You really, really love your wife and really, really love your kids, and created a pretty cool place to live and create some pretty cool experiences. So just tell me a little about Triple Barrel Ranch, man.
Okay, so about 3 years ago, we were living in a tract home, and the mortgage was it was a nice home, but the mortgage was so insignificant to us financially that I didn't even notice when it was paid, and it was on track for being paid off in, 6 or 8 years, and it kind of seemed like a dream in a way, but we just wanted more. We wanted more space. My kids had gotten into raising hogs for 4-H, and we were trying to do that at the school, and that wasn't working out. And then we were doing it at a local farm, and that wasn't working out because the drive time back and forth to the farm was just so significant. And so we set out to find a house on about 3 acres. And it's kind of a long story. I'll shorten it up. We ended up buying a house on 31 acres, and it's not what we weren't even looking for that much land, but as soon as we drove onto the property, we were like, wow, this is it. I actually said it before we saw the house, because the house is set back in the woods. You can't see it from the road. And as soon as we drove on the property, I said, we're here. We found it. We looked at over 100 houses. It took us 5 months. You know the story. We lived in a fifth-wheel trailer for 5 months, family of 4, 2 teenagers, living in a fifth wheel because we had a dream, and we just knew that the dream was out there, and we just had to have faith that the dream was going to come true. So fast forward about 2.5, 3 years, and we live on what we've named Triple Barrel Ranch. We're raising longhorn cattle just for fun and profit. We actually have a Watusi. You should Google what a Watusi cow looks like. It's really cool. We've got giant horns. They're from Africa. The kids are still raising hogs for 4-H. We have ducks and chickens. The chores are just a little kind of nugget of our day. The kids do chores in the morning and the evening. We're trying to instill that work ethic in them. But the animal related chores are really insignificant. It gets you out of the house and gets you a little exercise, and you get to enjoy nature and the animals and whatnot. And so I guess the point of us telling that story of talking about the Triple Barrel Ranch is that's an example right there of something I didn't know I could afford. I didn't know if I could afford it. Yeah. And what's happened over the last 3 years is because I needed to grow myself and I needed to grow my business. I would say we're back to the mortgage is just sort of insignificant. It's not really that big a deal, but we're building that asset, that tremendous asset that at the end of our, when it comes time to retire, that thing's going to be worth a whole lot more than if we'd have just played small and stayed in that real nice tract house in that real nice neighborhood and paid the house off in 6 to 8 years. We're going to be a lot farther ahead while also getting to enjoy living the dream. The dream that we always had of living on a ranch and having some animals and having space and not having to worry about what the neighbors thought or if you're being too loud or whatever the case may be. So it's really awesome.
No, very cool, man. Thanks for sharing the story. I know it was one more thing to add to that story is because I think when you sold your house, you thought you were moving into another house, and that fell through somehow. And I remember, I just remember this, and I'm not saying like, I just remember saying to you, hey man, you probably got a better place on the horizon. It just wasn't meant to be. And I know at the time, I don't know, because I know you guys enjoy this lifestyle. So when you lived in your fifth wheel, I mean, it's a luxury home, guys. I mean, it's pretty nice. I've seen it, but I mean, you enjoyed it, but you were probably like, sometimes you're probably like, well, this sucks, but this is kind of enjoyable. But then you guys got Triple Barrel Ranch. So, I'm sure during that time you guys were upset you lost that place, but the better place was on the horizon, right?
Yeah, it felt devastating at the time when that first house fell through.
Yeah.
And it did. It felt really devastating. But then I just went back to one of those things that I said earlier, within every challenge lies an even greater opportunity. And so that instance where we went ahead and sold our house without a place to go, just knowing that we're gonna stay in a trailer park, in a fifth wheel trailer for some undetermined period of time, because we had faith that things were going to turn out even greater. That was a real learning experience. And whether you believe in God or the universe or energy or karma, whatever, you just have to have faith that things are going to turn out better. And you just work every day toward that dream of things are going to work out better. Now, I'm not going to lie and tell you that during that 5 months that we were living in the fifth wheel, we never had doubts, or that we never thought, hey, this isn't like what we thought we were signing up for. But for the most part, I would say about 98% of the time, the whole family, all four of us, were down with the challenge. We were down with the fun. It had some nice little side benefits. You can clean up a fifth wheel trailer in about 15 minutes with four people. So there's not a lot of housekeeping, not a lot of chores.
Yeah.
It's also really, really cheap. It was really, really inexpensive. I mean, I think at one point our lot rent was, it was so small. I want to say a couple $100. It was hardly anything. And so what it did allow us to do is on weekends, since you didn't want to sit around literally in the trailer staring at each other, we went out and did things.
Yeah.
We went out and did things as a family and spent time together, because we're a really tight unit, despite the fact that I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. We're a real tight family, and we enjoy each other, and we enjoy spending time together, and that brought us closer together. And we drive by that trailer park every so often. We just did last week, and I asked the kids, so do you miss that place? And they said no. And I said, okay, well, do you miss the old house? No. We're so glad that we live where we live now.
That's right.
Now, that wasn't the case when we first moved in. The house was a little rough. It was nice, but had some repairs and things that needed to be done. And the property was very rough. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of physical labor to get it to where it's at.
Yeah.
But I asked the kids recently, so you glad we live here? They say, absolutely. This is the best thing we could have ever done.
Yeah.
That makes you feel good as a parent,
Yep. Just kind of wrap up here and just kind of, wrap up what you said here. One thing that the thing that permeated here is really, as a business owner, you got to walk through unattached, so you got to be emotionally unattached to the things that are happening to you. Stick to your system, stick to your process, stick to your actions. And when things happen to you, you got to let them, kind of be like the water on a duck's back. And that's, the biggest thing of most successful people I see is that, when things happen, it's literally water on a duck's back. I'm not saying that they don't struggle with it, but the more that you can squash out the negativity with the positivity, the more you can squash out the negative things with positive actions, the less they'll kind of stick to you. So Darrin, it's really cool. Thank you for sharing so much with us today. One from a tax attorney to an IRS attorney, to helping people with their tax problems, to helping, ideas with entrepreneurs today. The other thing is, where can people find out more about your services and learn a little bit more about you?
Probably the best place to go is to my website, which is at getirshelp.com. I also have a podcast that's similar to Matt's in some ways, but dealing only with IRS problems. There's, I don't know how many episodes. There's a couple years of a radio show episodes there at the podcast. It's a great place to find us, find more information about us as well.
Very cool.
Oh, and actually, how could I forget? My video channel on YouTube, I have over 300 videos that talk more about how to solve IRS tax problems. And if my son and I can ever get around to it, we intend to do a little video podcast just about our adventures on Triple Barrel Ranch. But it's one of those things. You just got to make the time to do it, because we have a lot of adventures out on the ranch. That's for sure.
No, I'm sure you do. Well, hey, Darrin, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being a friend, helping me with some things over the years, and partnering with us in business, and continually that we refer some clients to you so you can help out not just their IRS tax problems, which is big, but also just help them out to structure their entity, structure their business properly so they can pay the legal minimum in taxes. So I appreciate you, man, and everything you do for us. So thank you.
Hey, Matt, I value your friendship quite a bit as well, and it's been great knowing you, and this has been a lot of fun here today. I hope we get to do it again soon.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot, Darrin. I appreciate it, buddy.
All right. Take care.